Welcome! We're reporting today from the front lines of the global economy with a special report on the tiny switches that run our world, semiconductors. Now, we're talking about components so small but so incredibly powerful that their supply can literally dictate the rise and fall of nations. So, let's dive right in.
And, that is not an exaggeration. Think about it. From the smartphone in your pocket to the power grid that lights up your city, and even our most advanced medical and defense systems. Everything, and I mean everything, depends on these microscopic bits of silicon. Making sure we have a steady supply, well, that's become one of the most critical issues of our time. It's a matter of national security.
This single number, 12%, really gets to the heart of the problem for the United States. In 2020, the U.S. share of global semiconductor manufacturing was just 12%. Now, to give you some perspective, back in 1990, that number was a whopping 37%. So this isn't just some small market shift, it's a huge, dramatic realignment of global technological power.
Okay, so to really understand how we got here, how we got to these geopolitical tensions, we've got to rewind the clock. We're going way back to the dawn of the digital age, a time when the very idea of a computer was this gargantuan, room-sized machine.
Before semiconductors, computing was, well, it was a clumsy giant. The very first electronic computer, ENIAC, was powered by these things called vacuum tubes. It was so enormous, it took up an entire building, it sucked up a city block's worth of electricity, and it got so hot it was constantly about to break down. This was the big technological roadblock of the era.
And then, everything changed. In December of 1947, working in the now legendary Bell Labs, two physicists, John Bardeen and Walter Brattain, made the first working transistor. Their boss, William Shockley, improved on it just a month later. And for this one single invention, the three of them would share the Nobel Prize in Physics. The solid-state era had officially begun.
And this was the device that sparked the whole revolution. The transistor did the exact same job as a big, fragile vacuum tube, but it was tiny, it was reliable, and it used just a fraction of the power. It was the little solid-state switch that would shrink those room-sized brains into pocket-sized power. But inventing the transistor, that was just the beginning. The next great leap was figuring out how to put not just one, but an entire city of circuits onto a single, tiny piece of silicon.
So the big idea became, why are we building circuits by soldering individual transistors together when we could basically print them all at once? That was the core concept behind the integrated circuit, or IC, and it really marked the true dawn of the microchip era.
See, inventing the IC wasn't quite enough. You had to be able to mass produce it. And a series of these incredible rapid-fire innovations made that possible. The planar process, that made transistors flat and stable. Photolithography, that let them etch super complex designs onto the silicon. And the MOSFET transistor became the perfect, tiny little switch for all things digital.
All of this innovation led to one of the most famous predictions in tech history. In 1965, Gordon Moore, one of the co-founders of Fairchild, noticed that the number of transistors they could cram onto a chip was doubling roughly every 2 years. Now, this wasn't a law of physics, right? It was more of an economic observation that kind of became a self-fulfilling prophecy, setting this relentless pace for the entire industry to chase.
And you can really see Moore's law in action here. Through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, we went from large-scale integration to ultra-large-scale integration, packing millions, then tens of millions of components onto a single chip. It's this incredible, predictable explosion in computing power that has driven tech for over 50 years, taking us from desktop calculators all the way to the supercomputers we now carry in our pockets.
Okay, so that brings us to today. That amazing history has created an equally amazing, but also incredibly complex and, well, fragile global supply chain. And this network has critical choke points that have become the focus of some really intense geopolitical competition.
The answer to that question is, it's complicated. It's not one country. It's a hyper-specialized global network where different nations dominate different parts of the process. So think of it less like a kingdom ruled by one king and more like an intricate, interdependent ecosystem.
When you look at where the economic value actually comes from in the chip industry, you see this intense concentration. Over 60% of the value comes from just 3 places: China, Taiwan, and South Korea. And that concentration is both a source of incredible efficiency and profound vulnerability.
The specialization is absolutely key to understanding what's going on right now. The US, it leads in the brainwork, the chip design, the software tools. The US and Japan, they make the super complex equipment. But the most advanced manufacturing, the actual making of the cutting-edge chips, is overwhelmingly concentrated in Taiwan and South Korea. If you disrupt that one stage, you could send massive shockwaves through the entire global economy. So why did this concentration happen? Well, a huge reason is cost. Building and operating one of these multi-billion-dollar factories, or fabs, is 25 to 50% more expensive in the US than it is in Asia. And that difference is largely because of massive government incentives offered by Asian countries to lure these vital industries to their shores.
For 50 years, the industry's motto was simple: get smaller. But now, we're hitting a wall, a physical wall. As transistors shrink down to the scale of atoms, the old rules just don't apply anymore, and the race is on to invent the next generation of computing.
Yeah, Moore's law is slowing down. You can only make things so small before weird quantum physics takes over and heat becomes a problem you just can't solve. We can't keep shrinking the same old designs. What that means is the industry needs a fundamentally new playbook to build a better switch.
So the path forward is multidimensional. Literally, innovators are adding new dimensions, going from flat 2D circuits to stacking them in 3D. They're developing entirely new transistor designs, and they're exploring completely new materials beyond silicon, things like gallium nitride or even single atom-thick sheets of graphene, all to get past silicon's limits.
And this brings us to the final, and I think the most critical question. A new technological revolution is dawning, and with it, a brand new global competition.
That quote really says it all. The global race to control the next generation of semiconductor technology is already on. We're seeing massive government investments, like the CHIPS Act in the United States, and similar pushes from China and Europe, all aimed at one thing: self-reliance. This is no longer just about economics. It's a matter of strategic national importance.
Think about it. Just as the transistor and the integrated circuit created the modern world we live in, the technologies being invented today will shape the world of tomorrow. The question of who will lead this new revolution, well, that will determine not just the future of our technology, but the balance of global power for decades to come. From the heart of the tech revolution, this is The Explainer.